The Bills are headed into the playoffs on a high note. Marner is an all-star, and could the Raptors be headed towards a tank? Hey everyone, welcome into another Sun Sports Roundtable. Rob Wong joined alongside by Steve Simmons and Michael Traikos. And gentlemen, it was a roller coaster week for the Buffalo Bills with the cardiac arrest suffered by DeMar Hamlin, followed by the news that radio play-by-play voice John Murphy recently suffered a stroke. Great news on Hamlin, of course, as he is now alert and recovering. Murphy slowly recovering as well. On the field, it was an emotional win for the Bills as they took care of the Patriots as they now head into the playoffs next week as massive favorites against Miami. Steve, they are the second shortest favorites to win the Super Bowl right now behind the Kansas City Chiefs, but could a motivated Bills team playing for more than just a ring right now be the team to beat?
Yes, they can, but I'm not going to call them that. And that's because the AFC is so top heavy. If you look right now, Kansas City is Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. The Bills with all of the motivation on their side and Josh Allen are what they are. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals are right there with both of those teams. So to say any one of those three teams is really the favorite going into playoffs, yeah, you can make the case because of what happened with Hamlin, but I don't believe right now that they are any more equipped to beat Kansas City or Cincinnati or either of those teams, no matter which way you look at it. I think those are three teams, and all three can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what Steve said. I think they're favored. The Bills are favored against the Dolphins. After that, all bets are off. And I'm a big believer in, star talent wins at this time of year. And when you've got Mahomes as your quarterback, nothing against the Bills or anything, but, Mahomes is a difference maker. We see it year after year. He's probably going to be the MVP this year, or he should be. And, come playoff time, when the game is on the line, I want Mahomes with the ball where he can just air it out or just do something special that no one else can do. So, love the Bills, love what they mean at this time of year, and I'm really emotionally invested in them. But I'm not putting any money on them.
Well, look at last year. The Bills are 13 seconds away from beating Kansas City, and we all assume Kansas City wins that game. They're going to the Super Bowl. They don't beat Cincinnati. It's these teams are that high of a caliber. The quality is so high at the quarterback position. These are really I think the three best quarterbacks in the NFL, all on one side of the conference.
Is it fair to say, though, Steve? Sorry, Rob. Is it fair to say that the Bills have become everyone's team now? Like, if you don't have a rooting interest, say your team's out of it, have they become the team that is just popular to root for just because of what we saw in the last week?
I think the entire NFL is rooting for them now.
It's definitely a situation where they are America's team and trending that way. So the quality, Steve, that you mentioned, not so much for the Raptors right now. They are coming off a win over Portland, but do remain 6 games under 500. Currently have the 7th worst record in the NBA. Mike, is it time to look past the playoffs and maybe look at the lottery if you're Masai Ujiri and go full-on tank mode here?
Well, there's a guy, like we keep talking in hockey about Connor Bedard, but I think a lot of hockey fans forget in the NBA that there's a guy in Victor Wembanyama, and I'm probably mangling this poor kid's name, but he's been the projected #1 pick for years now. A guy with Durant size, ability, can pretty much do it all. And if you're the Raptors and you have even a 1% chance of landing this guy, I think you've got to do it in what is looking like a pretty decent draft as well. So after last night's game, there's a report that Fred VanVleet has turned down a max offer with the Raptors. For me, that's enough indication to move on from Fred, move on from Pascal, and really load it up and try to get this guy in the draft. So I'm curious to see what Steve thinks, but I'm of the belief if you're not going to be a playoff team and you're not going to win a championship, you might as well go all out and go the other way.
There's nothing worse in sports than being in the middle. You're not good enough to challenge for a championship. You're not bad enough to get an early draft pick. And I think that's where the Raptors find themselves right now. They're in that mushy middle. And I don't know how you tank. Like, you can't move some of their guys. And you may not want to move some of their guys. Are you going to want to move Pascal Siakam? Are you going to want to move Scotty Barnes? Like, how do you go about tanking? I'm not sure how they can. How much interest is there in a Fred VanVleet right now? Like, you look at their roster, and yeah, they have 5 pretty good players starting. After that, they don't have much of anything. So they're caught right now between being, sort of nowhere and maybe getting into the top 10 so that they can, get in a playing game, and that's not going to take them anywhere. And this is the worst kind of position you can be as an NBA team. No one wants to be in that middle. It gets you nowhere.
Finally, guys, the NHL announced their list of 32 All-Stars that will be headed to Florida for the Midwinter Classic. Mitch Marner selected from the Maple Leafs. Fans will now vote on the final 3 All-Stars for each division. Steve, lots of good candidates on the Leafs this year. If it were up to you, who is going to be joining Marner in Sunrise?
Well, it depends what you want. Do you want the player who's played the best this season? Or do you want the player who the fans and the game and the sponsors and everybody is going to want? If you want that guy, it's Austin Matthews coming off the Hart Trophy season. He's still playing pretty well, coming off the year he wins the Rocket Richard and scores 60 goals, and he's one of the faces of the NHL. Has he outplayed William Nylander this season? Not in my opinion. Nylander's been a flashier guy, more of an all-star really, in the way in which he's played. The numbers are quite similar. So Nylander deserves to be at the All-Star game, but the game itself and the event itself deserves to have Austin Matthews there.
I'm going to preface this by saying the All-Star game is dumb. It doesn't matter who goes to the game. I don't think Steve's watching it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But, you're talking about William Nylander having the best season that he's had. Well, coincidentally, he got moved to Austin Matthews' line there, Steve. So, there might be a correlation involved in that. Like we saw what Mitch Marner was able to do last year. And now we're seeing, it's the Austin Matthews effect. And I don't think William Nylander has this season if he's playing with John Tavares again. So for my money, what you said, it's a star-driven event. You got to have the stars there. That's why Cale Makar is there ahead of Mikko Rantanen. And I think that's why Austin Matthews deserves to go ahead of William Nylander. And nothing against Nylander. What a season he is having. He's finally being the consistent performer that a lot of Leaf fans have been really begging for him to be since he broke into the league. Arguably the most skilled player on this Leaf team. He just doesn't do it every night. So, good on him. But, you take away Austin Matthews from that line and put him back on Tavares' line, there's no way he's putting up those numbers.
See, I don't agree with that. I watch him very closely. So many of the plays he makes are things that he does on his own. He is so good with the puck. He is so good handling the puck. He is so good shooting the puck that he doesn't necessarily need line mates. He can do stuff on his own more really than almost anybody else on the Leafs or around the NHL. So I say applaud William Nylander for all he's doing right now. But for the sponsors and the people and for the 4 people watching from home, Mike, let's send Austin Matthews.
Yeah, it should be an interesting situation to see who does go for the Maple Leafs as another All-Star, but I do agree with Mike. The All-Star game is done, and especially the voting and the selection process. They need to work on that, but maybe that's a discussion for another roundtable. Let us know your thoughts on all of these topics and more in the comment section below. For Steve Simmons and Michael Traikos, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week on another Sun Sports Roundtable.